Finland is considering implementing a basic income policy, which basically means that everybody in the country gets a Social Security check every month their entire life. So Take Part reports on this, quote, every resident would receive a monthly payment equivalent to about $870. The payment would replace all other welfare, Social Security programs, and unemployment payments. The Finnish government plans to begin testing the program in 2017. Some fear the basic income would be unfair, with the wealthy receiving the same amount as the poor. Others worry it might make people less eager to find work. They continue here, but the monthly check is designed to get people back into the workforce. For many Finnish citizens, getting a part-time or low-paying job could impact their welfare benefits, leaving them worse off than if they did not work at all. All right, so this is really, really interesting because they're talking about, at the end there, an incentive problem. So what are you going to do if you make more money when you're not working, and if you go work and take a part-time job or whatever, low-paying job, whatever the case is, you don't make as much as if you were to just sit on your couch and collect money from the government. Now, that's something that, it's a rare instance where the right wing is actually right when they call out that problem of the incentive structure. I think their motive is not pure when they call it out. They're trying to demonize poor people and argue against all forms of a social insurance program or safety net program. So they're wrong on the bigger picture, but in the narrow incentive debate, they're not wrong when they say you need to structure it so that people are incentivized to work and that there's a bigger reward for working than sitting on your couch. But the answer is not, hey, keep the wages low and keep the welfare benefits higher than that. The answer is make the wages higher. You can keep the welfare benefits or the safety net benefits as they are, but you should make the payment higher so that when people work, they are getting more out of it than sitting on their couch. So that's my general breakdown in that aspect of this conversation. But in terms of the broader idea, so talking about basic income. Now, I have to admit, for the longest time I wasn't a supporter because of one of the reasons they actually point out here, which is I don't like the idea of like the Walton family getting a check for $870 every month from the government when they're already rich beyond imagination and they don't need it. If anything, the government should tax them much, much more. Don't give them a basic income. That's crazy. So I always thought, and there were some inflation issues that I was worried about, but I always was in favor of something called a negative income tax rate, which means that every modern society has a progressive tax system where the less you make, the lower the taxes you pay, the more you make, the higher taxes you pay. But this would make it so that you add some brackets that are negative. So, let's say you make $20,000 a year, instead of you paying 5% in taxes or whatever the case is, you would actually get back, you fall into the tax bracket of negative 10%, whatever, something like that, and then you get money back. And this makes it so that you don't have the rich people getting that check because they don't need it. They're just taxed higher, and you don't have to give everybody the exact same amount when some people obviously don't need it and some people need it greatly. But when I read this, I started to think over my position. Now, I still like the idea of a negative income tax. Don't get me wrong. In fact, I strongly am on that page. But I'm not as against the idea of a basic income as I once was, as long as you do it the right way. So what I mean by that is I wouldn't do it in a way where you just implement it like that, end of conversation. You don't, do other things with the budget in order to make ends meet. I would do it so that, now some countries in Scandinavia, I don't know if Finland is one of them, but they have certain industries that are nationalized. Not every industry is nationalized. There's some things that are private, but some industries are nationalized where they've given themselves enough leeway where they can do this. So let's say in the U.S. we nationalize the oil industry. I know some Republicans just considered suicide with me saying that. But let's say we did that. Well, if you do that and you raise enough money, which of course you would if you nationalize the oil industry, well then yeah, I'd have no problem with giving people a basic income and calling it a day on that front. And I also would have no problem eliminating some of the social safety net programs if you do that. And you know who did this? There's a state in America that did this. Alaska. You want to know who that was under? Sarah Palin. Now, I'm actually one of the people who, before I heard Sarah Palin talk, I didn't think it was a bad pick for John McCain to say, this is my running mate. But then when you hear her talk, you go, oh, she's an idiot. Bad idea. But in terms of, if you were to look at her record on paper at the time that they chose her, which is probably what his campaign did, I'm sure they spoke to her too, but they didn't get the full picture of just how crazy she is. That was one of the things that she did, which was, I thought, a fantastic idea. It was arguably one of the most socialist things in any state in the United States of America. So I was like, oh, that's a good idea. And is that something that I would support across the U.S.? Yes. So I'm not 100% for a basic income, but if you do it the right way, where you tie it to an industry and you guarantee the cash flow, well then sure. And this opens up a bigger conversation about that Stephen Hawking brought up not that long ago, which is moving into a digital future, a future that has incredible technology. I mean, we're already at that point to a certain extent, but technology that's even crazier than it is now. Moving into that future, we have the ability to kind of assign everybody a machine, and then your machine does the work for you, and then you get a check for your machine doing X, Y, and Z. Now, if we don't go down that road, because we are moving towards, the machines taking over, essentially, if we don't go down that road, well, then it's going to be a problem. If we keep this weird capitalist oligarchy-like system happening, you're going to have the captains of industry, the billionaires, the elites, wanting to keep all of the material wealth themselves, and then not even giving crumbs to what they view as the peasants. And then, you're talking about an unstable society. You're talking about revolution, perhaps, at some point. But we have an opportunity, and Stephen Hawking says, if we do this the right way, where everybody's assigned a machine and it does the work for you and you get the income that way, that would be better, and that would be sustainable. We can have something, not a utopian society, but something close to a utopian society, if we divvy up everything in a rational way, and yes, dirty word, I know, redistribute. Because if you don't redistribute, in reality, you still are redistributing, because the money's just going from the middle class and the poor to the rich. So you're either in favor of that kind of negative redistribution, or you're in favor of some level of intelligent redistribution where it does go from the rich, the captains of industry, the elites, to everybody in the country. Not saying, hey, make them poor, not saying they're not allowed to be rich. Of course they could still be rich, but within reason, you do redistribution of wealth, and you make it so that in the future, we actually have a shot at keeping this whole experiment of humanity together, and we don't revert back to barbarism and savagery.